Imagine spending months collecting thousands of paper surveys, only to box them up and leave them to rot. In development programs, an overwhelming amount of collected data, dashboards, logs, and field reports, is never actually used to drive change. Millions of dollars flow into complex monitoring systems and rigorous evaluations. We track outcomes and measure indicators, but all too often, that administrative effort translates into zero management decisions on the ground. This disconnect is known as the learning gap. It's the precise point in a project lifecycle where evidence stops moving. A report gets written, but it fails to influence our understanding of the problem, trigger an action, or shape future practice. Possessing information is not the same thing as learning. Producing credible evidence and actually putting that evidence to work are two distinct organizational capabilities. The learning gap rarely happens because a team lacks data. It happens because the connection between the evidence gathered in the field and the people with the authority to act on it is severed. You can track declining community participation for 6 straight months, but if the frontline staff observing the drop don't have the budgetary or contractual power to adjust the schedule, the program will blindly repeat the same operational mistake. Closing this gap requires re-engineering how we manage programs. We have to force a permanent structural connection between what we observe on the ground and how we execute management action. Raw data only transforms into usable evidence through rigorous analysis. Next, we filter that evidence through structured reflection, generating learning that improves human judgment. Finally, that sharper judgment triggers a concrete management decision that shifts the path forward. This means treating a program's theory of change, our original blueprint for how we expect our activities to create impact, not as a rigid monument to be defended, but as a testable scientific hypothesis. As implementation progresses, new contexts, risks, and local incentives become visible. Our roadmap has to continually pivot to accommodate the actual realities we encounter on the ground. A quarterly learning meeting that generates hours of discussion, that ends without a single assigned action item, is not actual learning. It's merely passive reporting. We need a repeatable architecture, the AAYAN Adaptive Learning Cycle. It starts as we observe, generate evidence, interpret, and reflect. This forces action. We decide, adapt, and implement. Finally, we monitor, evaluate the adaptation, and institutionalize the learning permanently. The true discipline here isn't checking 10 boxes in a row. It's ensuring that the momentum carrying us from evidence to decision and through to reassessment is never broken. You can design the most elegant process on paper, but it will seize up and shatter if you lack the organizational conditions to support it. First, programs must prioritize decision-relevant evidence over hoarding data. Second, they must build structured reflection directly into daily management rhythms, rather than saving it for an annual retreat. Third, you need meaningful participation from local communities so you aren't flying on assumptions. Fourth, you need absolute clarity on who holds the authority to authorize a change in direction. Fifth, there must be psychological safety, allowing field teams to report failures without fear of punishment. And finally, you must build institutional memory to ensure hard-won knowledge outlasts the current project staff. Ultimately, a sophisticated learning system fails if the surrounding organizational culture punishes honesty or obscures decision-making power. This brings us to a critical warning. We call it the adaptation trap, the organizational fallacy that making an adaptation is, in itself, proof of program improvement. An adaptation is not a guaranteed fix. It is simply a new, untested hypothesis. And like any change, it could easily introduce new, unintended risks to a project. If a team makes a major adjustment but fails to execute step 9 of the cycle, evaluating the adaptation, they are resetting the process and essentially flying blind. You can document that you reacted, but you have no idea if you actually helped. Organizational learning functions best as a relentless management capability, one that converts static evidence into real-world impact.